You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Well, there's a hint of autumn in the air, just a breath, and it brings along with it a certain sadness for the ebbing of summer. But at the same time, there's a kind of crackle of energy that comes with it, and I welcome that. And it certainly is fitting for today's program. My guest is going to be Pat Mitchell. She is the editorial director of TED Women, and throughout her entire career as a journalist, she's an Emmy-winning producer and a pioneering executive. She's focused on women and women's stories. She chairs the Sundance Board and the Women's Media Center Board, and she's a trustee of the V-Day movement and the Acumen Fund and the Skull Foundation. And, oh my goodness, she's the American Museum of Women's History Advisory Council congressional appointee, and she's here today with me to talk about becoming a dangerous woman, which is really an imperative these days. And there's all sorts of other things coming up, but before we get to Fighting Words and before we get to Surrealism Corner and Pat, we need to go inside the headlines. I'll deal with some of the headlines that the patriarchy recently handed us in Fighting Words at the end of the program, but here, in my ongoing attempts to make this segment live up to its name, Inside the Headlines, I want to cover some stories that you probably haven't heard elsewhere. Let's start with an item I almost put in the Surrealism Corner segment. A new study published by the American Psychological Association found, brace yourself, that a majority of Americans finally now believe women are as competent as men. Alice Eagley, a social psychologist at Northwestern University, and her colleagues examined public opinion polls representing the views of more than 30,000 adults from 1946 to 2018, looking specifically at how they rated three qualities: communion, agency, and competency. For communion, they meant compassion, sensitivity, and warmth. For agency, ambition, aggression, and assertiveness. And competency, intelligence, organization, and creativity. And they rated these three qualities along gender lines. Well, in 1946, only 35% of people thought men and women equally intelligent. In 1995, 43% thought so. By 2018, 86% believed men and women were equally intelligent, and those who did favor one sex over the other thought women were smarter. This represents, according to Eagley, massive social change. Part of which, she says, is that for many years we just didn't see examples of women leading as we do now. Didn't lead as journalists, as scientists, as politicians, whatever. Or, as the contemporary feminist movement has been repeating for 50 years, you have to see it to want to be it. Sigh. Still, I do love it when women's so-called dismissible anecdotal evidence, otherwise known as the scarred testament of our lives, finally is validated by academia. Look, I know, seriously, it does help in making policy changes and so forth, although if we had waited, as we were advised to do, for scholarly studies to see our grievances and give us permission as legitimate to rise up against them, well, that massive social change, it would never have happened to begin with. Now, this next item got overlooked last week in the furor of season startup, and I'm sad and sorry that happened. If you thought Women's Equal Pay Day was back in April, think again. This might have been observed as an aggregate, but the baseline had been raised by white women's statistics, which are still unequal with men at 80 cents to the dollar, but higher than women of color. September 15th was Native American Women's Equal Pay Day. The wage gap, bad for all women, is worse for Native women, 2 out of 3 of whom are mothers and primary breadwinners for their families. 13 states have wage gaps for Native women that amount to over $1 million losses over a 40-year career. In California, the typical gap between Native American women and white non-Hispanic men's annual wages is almost $35,000. The worst overall gender wage gap is in Louisiana, where women overall, working full-time year-round, only make 65.3 cents for every dollar men make, and Native women's gap is, of course, even wider. That story, in turn, leads us to the country of Bolivia, which boasts the shameful distinction of having the world's lowest minimum age for child labor. At age 10, kids can work legally for themselves or their families, and once they hit 12, they can work for anybody. Bolivia's controversial law enabling this, passed in 2014, is unique in the world. It was supported by Bolivian President Morales, who claimed that, quote, jobs help children develop social awareness, close quote. An estimated 850,000 Bolivian children work, nearly 30% of little people between the age of 5 and 17, according to UNICEF. The children sweep streets, wash dishes in restaurants, sort through trash, pick and haul and sell produce, shine shoes, clean houses, and carry bricks at construction sites. Activists say they are exploited and sexually abused, that many wind up living on the streets, victims of crime, violence, and addiction. Legalizing child labor was a terrible mistake, according to the president of the Permanent Assembly of Human Rights in La Paz, Bolivia's capital. Well, yeah. Lawmakers claim they had planned to set the minimum working age at 14. Horrific enough, I add. But that idea led to protests, they claim, by child workers in 2013. Supporters of the law say legalizing child labor empowers children. That children have the right to work. Remember that again, right to work laws? And the right to self-esteem that comes from work. Isn't it amazing how those who never have to live certain kinds of lives, and who wouldn't want those lives for their own children, and who didn't rise to their power and privilege by empowering themselves by sweeping streets and sorting garbage, well, those folks still manage to feel really positive that child labor empowers those children. Just as they tell us they feel that buying and pimping women's bodies empowers prostituted women. During the founding of the United States, a common defense of slavery as an institution was that it bettered the lives of kidnapped and enslaved African people. The children of Bolivia work for $4 to $8 a day in the larger cities, but kids aged 8 and 9 get paid usually only $1.50 a day, or they're just given a meal for their labor, some of which of that labor is hideously, euphemistically termed sex work. And here's the kicker. Bolivia ratified the International Labor Organization Minimum Age Convention in 1973, and ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1990. The ILO has repeatedly complained about Bolivia at the UN, but no changes. So why is Bolivia still allowed to sit in the General Assembly? And here's a different story about a different child, one who does make headlines. She's from the Northern Hemisphere, educated, white, privileged, yet making the most of all that as an already experienced leader against climate disaster. 16-year-old Greta Thunberg began her tour of the United States with testimony in Washington, D.C. She submitted to Congress the report issued last October by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, spelling out the threats of global temperature rise. Her remarks, impassioned but calm and authoritative, barely lasted a minute. She drew attention to young American students for organizing against climate action across the country, kids who don't garner the media focus that she receives. When speaking later on with those young peers, she talked tactics, saying she could not have imagined that school strikes, which she helped inspire, would catch fire in so many countries. But to Congress, she was blunt. Speaking to members of the Senate task force, she said, quote, "Please, save us your praise. We don't want it. Don't invite us here to tell us how inspiring we are without doing anything about it. I don't want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to the scientists. And then I want you to take real action." Period. Close quote. Age 16. And what have you done for your planet today? We're going to take a short pause here, although it's early and there's lots of show ahead. So ahead is still Pat Mitchell and Fighting Words, and, well, the best of intentions. Still, you can be on your way to someplace, and before you know it, you're waylaid into what's coming up. The Surrealism Corner. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And so we find ourselves in the Surrealism Corner. For a couple of years now, observant Mormons have had a difficult time knowing what to call themselves. As you might have heard, major changes come to the Church of the Latter-day Saints, its full name, through divine revelations apparently visited on high-ranking elders of the Church. Well, in August of 2018, Russell Nelson, the LDS Church president, said that God had sent him a divine revelation. He had, quote, "impressed upon my mind the importance of the name he has revealed. Church members should no longer call themselves Mormons or even use the shorthand LDS. Instead, they must use the Church's full name and refer to themselves as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, period, close quote." Or, if they wanted a shorter version, his revelation said that they could use Latter-day Saints. That was preferred. Now, since the president is regarded as a living prophet, the announcement carries divine weight. But that name is quite a long mouthful, and for the Mormon Church's 16 million adherents, the ensuing 2 years have been more of a mess than a challenge, even one going right to the core of their identity. See, the word Mormon has been with the Church from the very beginning, named for the Book of Mormon, the Church's signature text that followers believe was recorded on gold plates. This new divine directive to dump the word Mormon has hit hard, especially hard following the LDS Church's 2011 "I'm a Mormon" advertising campaign that had large ads in Times Square and plastered them all over the internet as well, with profiles of thousands of Mormons, I think trying to take advantage of the hilarious play on Broadway, The Book of Mormon. Anyway, many Mormons are relieved at the change because they have felt all along that the word had come to acquire a sort of cult tinge since it didn't use the word Christian and they were accused of not being Christians. Now, the Mormon History Association is keeping the name, as is Mormon Women for Ethical Government, an activist group formed in response to Trump's election. Good for them. But what to do about the Mormon Tabernacle Choir? It's world famous. Now, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is still wading through legalities and protecting copyrights and recording labels, all made under the former name, and the singers have had to retire their catchy nickname, the Motabs. For now, they're using the name Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, which nobody feels quite cuts it. I agree. Then again, the singers are pleased with the new catchword that they've come up, their new nickname, the Tab Cats. More seriously, it is simply not possible to stop the subversive creativity of artists in confrontation with authoritarianism. Crushing that has been tried since well before the ancient Greeks, the Chinese, the Persians, the Mayans. You'd think by now that authoritarians would get the memo, but no. To wit, wall artists and architects have joined in a project to respond to Trump's efforts to build his border wall. Scanned images and videos show children on both sides of the border playing on 3 seesaws. This is along the portion of an older section of border wall in Sunland Park, west of New Mexico's border with Texas. In social media posts featuring the seesaws, the wall looked like an afterthought rather than a barrier limiting contact between those who live under its shadow, because the wall in this area is composed of steel slats with gaps in between them, and the seesaw planks were placed between the slats, with kids on each side gleefully popping up and down on their teeter-totter wall. The artists and the architects have also designed a really cool burrito wall intervention that would allow a food cart to be inserted into the border wall, and a wildlife wall with gaps to ensure the free movement of critically endangered species between Mexico and the United States. Last spring, members of a right-wing militia detained migrants in Sunland Park and began collecting private donations for a border wall in the first section of fencing on private land. But the seesaw wall made for a very different kind of attention, focused on the small city of 14,000 people. Just as you can't silence creativity, you cannot stifle children's laughter. An awesome new study has revealed the most detailed 3-dimensional map yet of the Milky Way. It shows that our galaxy is not a flat disk, but has a warped shape like a vinyl record left out too long in the sun. The outer regions of one side bend up from the galactic plane toward the North Galactic Pole, and the other bends down. The thickness of the disk is not the same all the way across because it flares toward the edges, sort of like a pair of 1970s blue jeans. Both the new study and an earlier one published in February, which found a similar shape, are based on the distribution across the galaxy of stars known as Cepheids, bodies whose brightness varies in a regular cycle over time. That phenomenon, the dimming and the brightening, is the key to creating the maps. Keep in mind that, as Dr. Dorota Skowron of the University of Warsaw, the first author of the latest research, put it, quote, "The stars 60,000 light-years away from the Milky Way's center are as far as 4,500 light-years above or below the galactic plane, a big percentage." Close quote. Explanations for the warp include mergers with smaller galaxies, for the gravitational pull of the Milky Way being weaker and near the edge of the galaxy, meaning bodies here might be deflected out of the galactic plane by the tug of other stars. Warping is not seen in the central regions of the Milky Way because gravitational force there is really strong. Warped galaxies are not unusual, researchers say. It's estimated that about half the galaxies could have some detectable warping, but the warp of our galaxy is quite substantial in comparison with others. They say that. Quite substantial. Well, that explains something, though nobody has any idea what the something is, except that it's mind-bendingly surreal. Another brief pause here, and then we'll be right back with the conversation, which, remember, is with Pat Mitchell this week. If you've ever loved PBS, Public Broadcasting System, and who intelligent hasn't, you will be impressed to know that Pat was the first woman president of PBS. She was the first woman to head Turner and CNN Special Productions. She was the first. So many things firsts have been magnetized to her like iron filings to a pole. And she's always used that power, unafraidedly, and for the benefit of good things and for the sharing with other women. Coming right up, Pat Mitchell. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
You know, this is where I usually introduce the guest for the conversation. But I realize that I've been so pleased Pat Mitchell is finally coming on Women's Media Center Live that I have been introducing her throughout the program, so I'm not going to spend more time doing it now, but get right to the fun part, which is the conversation. Here's the one and only Pat Mitchell. Welcome, Pat. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Robin. I've long been wanting to be a guest on this program ever since you launched it. So how exciting that you would be my first interview about my first, and by the way, only book.
Well, I'm honored that we're your first interview. You can, go on and conquer the world.
Well, let's conquer it together. I've been inspired to do that for a long time by you and your writing.
I'm so proud that you finally did this book. I was worried that I was nagging you too much, but now I don't have to. And it's a terrific book. And of course, it is called Becoming a Dangerous Woman. I'm adding the little.
It does make you want to do that.
It makes me a witch cackle. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely, it does. Yes, and it is. It expands the definition of memoir. It takes you from beauty pageant winner in Georgia, all the way up to being the first woman president of PBS and first woman president of CNN Productions and first woman president of the Paley Museum of Media and, full disclosure, listeners, the first president of the Women's Media Center itself and the originator of TED Talks for Women and Sundance board member and WMC board. I mean, my God, and now a book writer.
It was a long journey, and you did encourage me so many times along the way. Let me express gratitude for that. But I was quite serious in saying how much your writing inspired me and is mentioned as that inspiration so many different times.
Thank you.
For sisterhood is global. These were my first insights into the world of women that I wanted to be a part of, the community that I knew was already changing the world as I was coming of political age in the South. But I had a hard time writing a memoir, Robin, because I just don't look back. I never have. I have always moved forward, and I tell that great story about my grandmother who always said, even when you fall on your face, it's a step forward.
Yeah,
it's a forward movement.
She sounds so wonderful. She just springs up off the page.
Oh, thank you for that, because she certainly sprang off the page in my life in every way. But she did encourage me early on to take risks, to believe in myself, and this, all the ways in which she and others who mentored me along the way, and we all need those mentors. So the book started out actually to be that, a more global approach to the mentoring that I had always done on an individual level is my way of giving back to the people who had done it for me. And so it was going to be a memoir actually intended to share insights from my mistakes and mishaps as well as successes, and the kind of shared learning that as women we do with each other by sharing our stories. So that was the beginning. But then I just had a hard time looking backward. So when I began to feel the danger in the times we were living in post the election of Donald Trump, it felt all the more important. And that is why I think the dangerous times prompted me to look at this book as a declaration of dangerousness, because the work we have to do to create a just and equal world, work that you've been involved in your entire life, it's much more dangerous, and we have to be braver and bolder to do the work.
Yes, you're right.
So it's become more than just a memoir with the hope of mentoring and sharing insights, but also, I hope, a call to action.
Well, it is. No question about that. It's many things. It's a call to action. It's a personal story, which is how we communicate and how our politics lives in reality, because the women recognize each other that way. And it also, you've done a really unusual thing in the structure, Pat, because your story intercuts with sections of other dangerous women. It becomes a collective vision, and in the process of form follows function. Stacey Abrams is there, the wonderful Stacey Abrams of Georgia. I-Jen Poo, who is organizing and has for some time caregivers across the country. Filmmaker Abby Disney, Kim Crenshaw from African American Policy Forum, and a young feminist activist and an activist from the Congo. I mean, there are these different voices that come in and talk about how and why they found themselves to be dangerous women. And then it goes back to your story, and these all sort of interweave, and it's a wonderful chorus that comes out of it. I congratulate you on the form. The form is really remarkable.
Well, when I convinced my editor that I really was not comfortable making this only my story. It didn't feel big enough, and I didn't feel my life was enough of a definition of what I felt we all need to do and the journeys we have all taken. And when I proposed that after each of the stories in my life that I would do an interview with another woman with some relevance to that story, and it began with Stacey, actually, who I was working with during the election. And I was writing about that period in Georgia that I grew up in, a period of segregation and the kind of rampant racism that we're seeing on the rise again today. And I thought, I want to talk to Stacey about what becoming dangerous means to her. So that started it. And then I began to try and find the women that I admired, and there were so many. Of course, I could have done a whole book of just interviews with women about their journeys. And by the way, I would love to do that book. If I ever do another one, it will be that one and not about me. But thank you for recognizing that what I had hoped for, and sounds as if for you it was this, a collective narrative about what it does mean in each individual life, wherever our work happens to be, what it does mean to become more dangerous to meet the challenges of the times we're living in.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The truth is also that your story, which I want to get back to just for a minute, excuse me, because it's always hard for women to talk about ourselves, but you managed to, in between others, is so, well, it's just very simply so honest, Pat. I mean, it's a hallmark of women's memoirs. It's so interesting because the great sort of memoirs that men have produced, and some of them have been great, but the honesty level, not so much. They're usually if not self-aggrandizing, then self-covering up. And if the hallmarks of women's memoirs are honesty, and I think they are, at least now, and now that there's a climate of support for that, and in fact thirst for that, and a readership, yours most decidedly qualifies. Even down to the hair.
I did have a friend write me back who I asked to review that chapter, and she wrote me back. She said, "Whoa, girlfriend, you've gone too far."
Yeah. Well, Going Too Far was the name of one of my books, and believe me, when you go too far, it's the right direction. Now, you talk about thinning hair as we age, which we all go through, and how do you function as a public figure? And a woman, I mean, men, they can just shave it all off and be Jean-Luc Picard and be, gorgeous. But women, oh my God, no. And then you discovered a wig.
I shared the secret because I think it's been a transformational discovery in my life. It has given me back so much time. I honestly don't know if I could have written this book if I were still spending the same amount of time trying to, tease the thinning hair. But hair is also a theme, that comes out of that growing up in the South in the 50s.
Of course.
And that's why I did the whole chapter, what I call getting ready, because getting ready was always so time-consuming.
Yes.
When you had to be perfect.
Yes.
Coordinated head to toe, hair, not a hair out of place. That was the world that I grew up in. No money, but perfection when it came to walking out the door.
That's absolutely right. And I always thought of that. I thought of that too during Hillary's campaign, because when you have to get up, and you're on your fifth city that day and you're getting up at 6 a.m. and you've had 2.5 hours sleep, she'd have to get up at 5 because her hair and makeup had to be done. And I always
I actually talked to her during the campaign, and I said, "Hillary, and I shared with her my secret."
Yes.
I did. I said, I could get you a wig and it would just take care of the whole thing.
Just slap it on your head and go.
But of course she couldn't do that because the press would discover it, and that would become the next 16 articles would be about that.
That's right. Oh, my God. Oh, well, it's a very welcome and friendly and trusting and lovable section of the book. Not that there are not others, but this one is. There's also... it's so impressive. You talk about the fact that there are 1 billion, that's with a B, powerful women over age 50, the fastest growing demographic on the planet. That stiffened my spine and made me think, okay, now we're going to do this. That was wonderful.
Well, I actually credit Jane Fonda with getting me interested in the subject of why older women can be more powerful than any other population on Earth. Right. And when I declared myself to be a dangerous woman the first time, I prefaced it by saying, I'm 76 now, so I've got much less to lose, nothing left to prove, so I can afford to be more dangerous. I also have more time, or at least I thought I would. I actually don't. But I use it more the way that I want to. So I am more willing to take even bigger risk. So there is something to age, but I didn't want to write the book only for older women because I don't want us to wait until we're 50 and 60 and 70.
Oh, God, no.
To embrace our power and
Absolutely.
And to change the nature of power. I really love that I got a chance to credit our dear friend Bella Abzug with that comment that resonates with me every single day. I think of it in some way or the other. That comment in 1999, that in the next century, women would change the nature of power.
That's right.
Rather than power changing the nature of women.
Yes.
Well, we're a long way from the time she first said that. And,
yes, we are.
And yet I believe it more deeply every day. And I'm counting on the global sisterhood, which you were the first to identify that was where our strength is.
I believe that this is the politics, ours is the politics of the 21st century. And if it's not, we don't have a 22nd century. So it better be.
I completely agree, Robin.
It better be.
My work with the global women leaders over the last 2 years has been the most satisfying and inspiring work of my life.
You've done wonderful work.
See what happens when you put women together in a room and you say, here are 5 areas of challenge, and see the problem solving that they do together.
Yes, it's very different process than the boys.
Very different, and it's for us, I think, the biggest opportunity that we have now to reverse the direction of the way the world is going, which we all know is not a good one. Roll back on our rights. When I was writing the chapter about my own unwanted pregnancy at a very early age and thinking about whether to share that or not,
moving.
My son didn't know that story.
Oh, it's so moving.
You know, you always think, how do you say to your child,
yes.
I contemplated this choice.
Right.
Well, we're right back there again.
I know.
I mean, Georgia has just as restrictive a legislation now going into place
yes.
in January as they had when I was, contemplating this choice without any legal way forward in 1964 and 5.
I know, and that's frightening. That's something that you call at different times in the book, and I would love for you to discuss. I know I can't keep you much longer because you're on a book tour, but situational turbulence. It's a wonderful phrase. Talk a little bit about that before I let you go.
Well, I think it relates to age and impatience. And in some ways that impatience can come at any age because we've all had what my wonderful physician at the Mayo Clinic, is the one who described it to me this way. She said, it's the weathering concept. We have just taken those little micro acts of sexism, racism, annoyances, discrimination, all the things that happen to us as women, and in particular happen to women of color.
Of course.
Certainly from our white privileged position, we have far less of it, but we still have it.
Oh, you bet.
And it just weathers away at our level of patience and tolerance. And I found that I now react to situations and the situation doesn't seem to call for the extent or dramatic response that I have to it. But on the other hand, I'm trying to look at that as, okay, it's happening. I am getting what is described as unduly upset. Or
I think you're getting overdue pissed off.
That's exactly it.
That's what I think.
Overdue pissed off is the same thing as situational turbulence.
Aha! Making up for lost time. Okay, well, we are all due, even women who are in their 20s and teens, even probably 3- and 4-year-old little girls, have a right to be royally pissed off.
We do, and let's just turn it into a fight for justice.
That's right. And this book will turn any smart woman who reads it into a dangerous woman. And we need every one of you. It's called Becoming a Dangerous Woman by my good friend and wonderful activist, Pat Mitchell. Pat, all good luck on the book tour and with the book, and stay safe and come back to us. And yes, write another book.
Thank you very much, Robin. This has been such a privilege.
Now for our final quick break, and then I'll be right back with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
And now we're ready for some fighting words. strictly a pacifist, I nevertheless am a peaceable person who regards the employment of violence not only as a brutalization of the flesh, but as a failure of the imagination. Similarly, I thought that vengeance, or at least a refusal to forgive, is a waste of time and energy. Forgive and forget, they say. Well, the latter is just unrealistic. You can't forget unless you have amnesia. But, for starters, I've never been a Christian, turning the other cheek. Then again, neither have almost all Christians, so that's no particular inspiration there. The thing is, just recently, a cluster of news stories set me off. There was nothing particularly unique about any one of them, nothing that was different from the pattern we're used to under patriarchy. It's just that the cluster, across a range of contexts, was startling, even in familiarity. It compounded insult upon insult. There was Brett Kavanaugh, confirmed by the narrowest of margins to sit on the Supreme Court for life, after having had to defend himself against public, convincing, credible charges of sexual assault that he rebutted with a rage tantrum before the Senate committee. Now, the story surfaces these days that there were additional credible witnesses willing to testify, in agreement with his accuser, Dr. Blasey Ford, the survivor of his assault. But the FBI received these appeals to testify and declined even to interview the people who volunteered. Possibly, the FBI background check, having been hurriedly green-lighted by the White House to finish up now, finish quick, and compounded at the insistence of Republicans on the committee, possibly the FBI was just worn out. They were maybe giving up because they were worn down by accusations from the far right on their own credibility. Whatever the reason, the FBI ignored the new witnesses and got away with it. And now Kavanaugh, it seems, has got away with it again. Or maybe not. Are we doomed to repeat a past that we don't understand after all? All this Kavanaugh stuff echoes Joe Biden's real sin decades ago when he chaired the Senate committee that confirmed Clarence Thomas to the court. His real sin wasn't only that he permitted profound abuse and insult against Anita Hill during the hearings, but also that he refused to call 2 additional witnesses who had been brought to Washington by the committee and who were standing in the wings waiting to testify and who would have corroborated Anita Hill's report. Now, decades later, Biden, once he announced his candidacy for president, finally apologizes to Dr. Hill, and in a blatantly tactical, not sincere manner. Yet the consensus is that she was ungenerous in her response to him. When press asked if she would forgive him, she pointed out the shallowness and the cynicism of his fake apology, of his waiting until now, and his campaign needs dictated a non-apology apology. He also never mentioned refusing to call the 2 other women. In a seemingly unrelated case, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau made a public appeal the other day for forgiveness after having been discovered posing in photographs wearing brownface in 2006. In his most winning, progressive, likable manner, Trudeau said that the consciousness back then just was not what it is now. In 2006, he didn't see that act as racist? In Japan, the High Court finally ruled in a case against 3 executives of the company that caused the nuclear disaster in Fukushima, finding the 3 executives innocent of any wrongdoing. See, apparently the disaster there, which made surrounding land and water radioactively poisonous for incalculable years to come, just happened by itself, not from any of these guys' criminal mismanagement. This is not only a huge problem, but also a small one. Despite smatters of criticism continuing, comedian Louis C.K. is in his career return, playing clubs by taking audiences by surprise, that is, not on the bill announced beforehand, for fear people will walk out or demonstrations will occur. In other words, trapping his audience by shock, the same way he did women by his genital exposure and masturbating in front of them. The message being, I can do what I want. I'm coming back strong after having admitted to accusations of sexual assault, genital exposure, masturbation before unwilling women, and other sexual misconduct. I asked for forgiveness, touch that square, make a little gesture, move on, ready to work now. Chucky's back. So is Charlie Rose. He's back. Not Bill Cosby, however. He's still sticking to his story of total innocence and still accusing almost 30 women of making it all up. He's also still in jail. But what got to me were a few conversations in passing with some people, good people, both male and female, who feel forgiveness is in order on all these occasions. It made me realize all over again with a choke of fury how willing, even eager, we all, women and men, to forgive men in a patriarchy. To forgive them, well, almost anything. A guy can shrug, spit 3 times, turn around, mutter, "Oops, my bad," and expect to be, boys will be boys, forgiven. Certainly Trump has intensified this I can do no wrong madness. But if Jerry Ford had not pardoned Richard Nixon after Watergate, we would not be so spineless today, and we might not have had Trump to begin with. Women, on the other hand, are blamed, and worse, far worse, blame ourselves, for entire lifetimes long, not only for acts worthy of apology, but even for those in which we are completely blameless, even for those in which we are, in fact, the victim. Oh, it's that internal blame that, reinforced by society, will get you every time. Why did I have that 3rd glass of wine? Why did I say he could come to my dorm to pick up a book just for a minute? Why did I accept that lift home? Because he seemed so nice. My fault, my fault, my fault. Why did I provoke my husband when I knew he was drunk and has a temper? Why did I walk down that street just because I was late, but I knew better about that street? Why did I think a short skirt was just the fashion and not realize it was a seduction? Why did I stay after work just because the boss insisted? Clearly, Brett Kavanaugh has never asked himself, why do I drink too much, and did I act out so badly during college? And maybe afterwards. Do you think Louis C.K. spent a lot of time, surely not enough, in deep cognitive psychological exploration of why he exposes himself to women and forces them to watch? Does Prime Minister Trudeau, so intelligent in so many areas, wonder why in hell, as late as 2001, he didn't know that wearing brownface would be, to say the least, offensive? Do you think that marches of thousands of women carrying signs reading, "No means no," made Matt Lauer or Charlie Rose think twice? I mean, really think, even once? Yet all have asked for and received some form of forgiveness and are busily reassembling their careers. The assault has to be so egregiously violent and frequent and in high victim numbers that it constitutes a major crime, as in the case of Weinstein, Spacey, Epstein, and Cosby, to qualify for being outside the realm of legal forgiveness. But for everybody else, hey, it was a long time ago, or he was young, or he didn't know better, or what's the point of going over old news, or these women are just harpies now going too far. So yes, this is in defense of vengeance, of becoming ancient Greek Erinyes, furies, of women letting loose in ourselves the insistence born of integrity, as the women who dared to testify, from Anita Hill through Dr. Ford and on up to Trump accusers and Epstein survivors, have done. This is in defense of seeing those charges through to justice for the survivors and, in the cases of victims who did not survive, justice for their families. This is in defense of women's newfound refusal to accept blame for violence done to us and on us, to tolerate any more the same distractions used by the powerful again and again, people of color who fought back against racism called uppity fools who invited what they got, children in violent families that use corporal punishment being told they deserved it, women who talk back to violent male partners, screamed at that they asked for it. Well, we do not accept your apologies, gentlemen. We do not find your capacity to forgive each other and emphasize ignorance and misunderstanding about your wrongdoings acceptable. We know some decent male human beings handle such situations differently, and the capacity is in all of you. So on the contrary, clearly we see your consistent, highly developed capacity for letting each other off the hook. We see it as complicity, and we define it for what it is: systemic. Systemic sexism, systemic racism, rigged game. There are things such perpetrators could do, in fact, that would make more of a difference, at least speaking for myself in my attitude. But not one of them so far has shown a sign of doing that kind of work. And no, gentlemen, I'm not going to do that work for you. It's for you to figure it out. That's part of the work. In the meantime, yes, you still should be deprived of your job, your career, your reputation, and in some cases, your freedom. And women? We're getting better, but we need to practice not saying I'm sorry about everything that we never had the power to affect in the first place. We need to practice not saying, "It's okay, I forgive you," until we can really mean it down to our toes because it has really been earned. Until then, let the Furies take the skies. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at @TheRobinMorgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. And now you can order my brand new novel, Parallax. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live: executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor Regina K. Scully, WMC president and co-executive producer of this program Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Be sure to join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.